I'm Mark Halperin. Welcome to the wide world of news, coast to coast today, with one of the people who would like to be the next governor of California in a very unorthodox recall process. John Cox is a businessman who has run for public office before, and he joins us now from the greater San Diego Metroplex. Mr. Cox, in one word, what's it like to run for governor of California, which you've done before?
Interesting. It's a wonderful state. It's fantastic. It's obviously a challenge in this state to get a message out because it's a nation. It's 40 million people. It's a very expensive and large place to get a message out. But it's a wonderful state. It's got incredible assets in terms of its resources, in terms of its natural beauty and universities and history. Silicon Valley, Hollywood, agriculture. It's a leader, oil and gas. I mean, it's got tremendous assets. What it doesn't have, Mark, is decent management. And the sky's the limit for this state if we get somebody in office who actually can get some things fixed in this state. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because there's just so much low-hanging fruit that can be fixed, but it's not going to be done by the politicians or the pretty boy, as I have taken to call him.
Governor Newsom is a very handsome man. I think that's objective. So
Yes.
I want to ask you a question that's going to sound political, but I'd really like you to steep your answer in policy.
Okay.
You're a Republican. Arnold Schwarzenegger got elected in the last recall as a Republican, but for the most part, Republicans have not done very well in the legislature, statewide. Just tell me the story of how Republicans went from a competitive party in California to one that's not competitive. And again, if you could focus less on politics and more on policy.
Well, on policy, they failed to deliver, Mark. They kind of went along with, the zeitgeist, the media, the current trends and things like that, instead of really focusing on things that matter to people, really, doubling down on improving education, for example. Our education system has gone down like this because the union bosses dictate most of it now. And we had Republicans. We had Pete Wilson, who was great. We had Schwarzenegger, who was a celebrity looking to be a celebrity, or continuous celebrity, I should say. But we didn't have people that stepped out and said, here, this is what we need to do. We need to fix education. We need to deal with housing and homelessness and water and electricity and all the creature comforts. We didn't do that. We focused on extraneous things that were, popular in the moment. I hearken back to, Governor Wilson and the immigration thing. We should have really said, let's get immigration solved. Let's not be punitive. Let's make sure we have enough immigration, but make sure it's secure and we know who's coming across the border, and we shut down the drugs, guns, and human trafficking. Instead of doing that, we kind of did something that was punitive, or was viewed as punitive. And so there was policy errors, I think, that were made. And to your point, another celebrity isn't going to fix this. Another politician isn't going to fix it. I look at states like Maryland and Massachusetts, which elected governors who had just been in the private sector, were business people like me, and they became governors in those blue states. And they're very popular. They're 60% plus approval ratings because they actually focus on fixing problems.
So you've cited two governors, Governor Baker, Governor Hogan in Massachusetts and Maryland, who are popular. They sort of cast themselves, I don't know if they call themselves this, but some of their issue positions and some of the way they've operated are more moderate Republicans. Is that a label you wear, moderate Republican?
I don't know. It depends on, like any label, it depends on what it means. If it means that I'm focused almost exclusively on the quality of life issues, I call them, the water, electricity, gasoline, jobs, lowering taxes, affordable housing, cleaning up homelessness, fixing the budget problems. If you say that I'm going to focus on those instead of the hot button issues like guns and life and sexual relationships and things like this, I guess you would say I'm a moderate, but I'm not. I'm a conservative, and I'm a conservative because I believe that the private sector solves problems and not government. I hearken back to Ronald Reagan saying that government is not the solution; it's the problem. I believe that private sector solutions solve these difficulties. They're the answer for healthcare that's unaffordable.
So but you're running to be not just in the government, but to lead the government. So I want to talk about two of the issues you raised. Housing. What role does government have? What role would the governor have if you were governor in making housing more affordable for Californians? Or would you just try to reduce regulation and let the private sector and the market handle that?
There you go, the latter. I'm in the housing business, Mark. I've been building and managing apartments in the Midwest mostly, because that's where I'm from, for 35 years. So I have detailed experience in building. And trying to build anything in California is just an exercise in futility. Lawsuits all over the place, delays, right, incredible fees being charged by municipalities because of their own budget problems. We've got a law called CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act, which was wonderful. It was signed by Ronald Reagan, but it was supposed to be applying to industrial uses and other things that were spewing chemicals and horrible things into our water system, right? But it was expanded, as these things usually are, to housing. So now any housing development that's proposed immediately gets multiple CEQA lawsuits that drag on for decades.
Really. So let me just clarify then. What you're saying is the problem with unaffordable housing in California is, again, if I get this right, there's too much regulation. It's too difficult. So if there were less regulation, there'd be more supply and price would come down.
It's not just supply demand. It's the cost of building. The cost of building is so high in the state because of these mandates and these lawsuits, that the only thing that actually works economically usually is luxury housing.
Right. Is there another state that you've seen do what you want to do in California?
The state that I actually have most of my business operations and I know very well is Indiana, which has had Mitch Daniels, who you might call a moderate Republican. He focused on quality of life issues.
Yeah.
It also had Mike Pence, who didn't necessarily. He got involved in a lot of social issues, as would be his, but he also focused on quality of life issues. And Eric Holcomb is the current governor, who's relatively unknown, but he's another guy who focuses on quality of life issues and is very popular.
So the other issue I want to talk to you about, and there's plenty I'd like to, maybe we can talk again, but I don't want to fill the internet up with this, is homelessness. Obviously, that's a quality of life issue for both the people directly affected, but there are a lot of people, particularly in your three largest cities in San Francisco, Los Angeles, and San Diego, who find dealing with the implications of homelessness to be a big problem. Tell me again, what's the market solution to homelessness?
Homelessness is really bad, Mark, because it's in your face. And why? Because you're driving down the road and you see these tent cities all over the place, and you're walking to a store and you're smelling, the remnants, right? So it's really in your face, and the politicians have just failed. They look at this as a housing issue, and it really isn't. It's a treatment and mental illness and addiction issue. I mean, there are tons of jobs in California right now. Maybe not as much along the coast. There's tons of jobs in the Central Valley, but these are a lot of these people are people that just have dropped out of the workforce because of an addiction or a mental illness. We have to treat those illnesses and those addictions.
But again, is that a market solution, or does the government need to treat them?
Well, I think it is partly a government solution, but it is free market too. I would have the government partner with a lot of secular and non-secular organizations. And there's tons of them, Mark, thank God. There's a lot of good people that want to help these people get back into productive society. I've toured a whole bunch of them. Father Joe's Villages here in San Diego, for example, and the San Diego Rescue Mission, Donnie D. There's Andy Bales at the Union Rescue Mission in Los Angeles. There's tons of these places that if government would partner with them and insist on accountability and results. See, that's what's lacking, Mark. Accountability and results. And it's because politicians are politicians. I'm a business guy. I've spent a career demanding accountability and results from the people that work for me. So it'll be second nature for me to make sure that these organizations actually do the job and actually cure these people and get them back into the workforce.
John Cox, we've barely scratched the surface of your campaign, but I like I said, I want to fill the internet. What's your website if people want to read more about you and your campaign?
johncox.com.
That's a good URL to have. I should have bought that years ago. I could have squatted and sold it to you for a fortune. You're
Thank
nice
you.
to make time. I wish you luck in the campaign. It's going to be pretty wide open, and people can read about your positions, follow you on social media, and hopefully we'll get a chance to talk soon as this goes along. But I appreciate you making time today.
Well, this was very short. Let's do this again. We've got
Okay.
a lot to talk about in this wonderful state.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all the time we have for it, because as I said, I never like to fill the internet, but we'll be talking more to John Cox and other folks out in California. Thank you for watching Wide World of News.